on Facebook for you to make your donations, $5, $10, whatever it is. This is what we do. This is what the World Affairs Council does. We normally do it in person, but because of the circumstances we're in, we're bringing programs virtually. Normally, we do maybe 2 events a month, maybe 3 events. We're doing 11 today, and we are, I don't have favorites, but this is one I've been looking forward to a lot because I've got a lot of brothers and sisters out there who have gone through a great deal, not only recently, but through their lives. And I've been looking for this panel. Thank you for joining. I think everyone could see A.B. Cruz, Cedric Ikpo, Gale Nelson, Dale Long. Before we get to them, I do want to say this was inspired, this whole day of programming, of 11 programs, was inspired of a young man who's in the on your panel right now, Gail Nelson, who is the CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters Miami. Soon after the killing of George Floyd, and all the protests that happened and everything that transpired from there, Gail did something remarkable, and he did an all-day Facebook Live event on race in Miami. He brought in Miami PD, he brought in littles and bigs and a lot of other stakeholders, and it really inspired me to do something. First, it was gonna be about race, and then we decided because we're participating in the Big Give, that we would do something special. So kudos to you, Gal, my friend, my colleague, my brother. Thank you so much for the inspiration to do this. Dale, it's always good to see you.
Likewise, good to be here, and thanks for inviting me.
And Cedric, it's been a while. Thank you for agreeing to join in. I know you have a lot of social media fans out here who've been looking forward to seeing you on screen. So all 3 of you, thank you so much. I'm going to tune in. I'm going to get off the screen, but I want to introduce the moderator, A.B. Cruz. He's one of our board members with the World Affairs Council. He's one of the proactive board members, and that says a lot because he puts his money where his mouth is. He walks the talk, and he doesn't shy away from challenges, whether it's raising money or putting on a program that is as important as this one. And by the way, the Young Professionals Committee has decided to extend the program on race to do it quarterly, to have discussion groups like this that really talk about the importance of race relations. AB is the president-elect of the board of the National Association of Asian Pacific American Bar Association. He's a graduate of the Naval Academy, University of Maryland. And I was telling Patricia this, I didn't know you were also a lawyer, but you graduated from Catholic University. He's also on the board of St. Mary's Hall and also the Down Syndrome Association. But gentlemen, I look forward to hearing you all. And I really thank you for taking time out of your day to talk about this important topic. And AB, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, Armin. I know we're a few minutes early. Does that matter, or should we just roll right in?
We can roll right in.
Okay. Well, thanks again, Armin. I appreciate the introduction. And like you, I've really been looking forward to this conversation that we're about to have. I should say good morning and welcome to everybody that's tuned in. We are the World Affairs Council of San Antonio, and this is a panel discussion on globalism and race. We really appreciate you joining us. As I said, I've really been looking forward to this discussion. It's certainly, I think, timely, certainly topical. I'd like to jump right in, or as quickly as we can. But before I introduce our esteemed panelists, let me quickly set the stage for the conversation today. And I don't really think this is necessary, but I think just to kind of get us in tune, and in sync with the topic of today. Please bear with me. Well, to state the obvious, we're living in an interesting, uncertain, and in some regards, troubling time. Even after almost 7 months, our everyday lives are still being impacted by COVID-19. Many people are still working from home, like I am here, if they're working at all. Our kids are still distance learning. I have my son on this side of me, and I have my daughter on this side of me, of my office here, home office, and they're doing distance learning. And frankly, or honestly, without their normal and much needed social interaction with their friends and classmates. Many business owners don't know if their businesses will see 2021. That's the situation we're living in. These are also times of widespread civil unrest, heightened racial tensions. We see a lot of the anti-police protests and sentiments that are playing out in today's world. And while some say that these issues have been building for some years now, I think it was certainly the tragic death of George Floyd in Minneapolis that sparked the flame that's been burning since. And it seems to be obviously spurred on by other events. Certainly more recently, Jacob Blake, the shooting of Jacob Blake in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And of course, what's playing out on TV every day is the continued clashes between Black Lives Matter groups, Antifa groups, and right-wing militia groups. We have playing out on the national stage city governments, local governments, state governments versus the federal government. And then throw on top of all that, it just so happens to be an election year, right? And we won't go into politics here, and I could certainly go on. But I think it's safe to say that for each of us here on this call, these things that are playing out have permeated our everyday lives, even our enjoyment of professional sports. I throw that in there because Cedric's with us, and he'll be able to talk about that. So let me introduce our special guests, and these are indeed special guests. We've already heard Armin mention Gail. Gail, nice to meet you. Gail Nelson. His professional career has spanned over 20 years of nonprofit management and leadership experience. As Armin mentioned, I think he is the president and CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters of Miami, a great organization. And I think he joined that team way back in, is that right, Cedric? July of 2006?
2006, correct.
Wow. And he has played a significant role in the growth and development of the agency's mentoring and fund development programs. Prior to joining Big Brothers Big Sisters, he served as executive vice president, chief operating officer at a moderate risk residential school for court adjudicated boys. For 12 years, he did that. I have to find, he was born in Lincoln, Nebraska, and grew up in Toledo, Ohio. He earned a Bachelor of Business Administration in Corporate Finance from the University of Toledo, that's in Toledo, Ohio, and a Master of Science in Management Administration of Educational Programs from Nova Southeastern University there in Florida. And I will point out that his faith and his family continue to keep him grounded in helping youth and families. And Gail, again, nice to meet you. So glad you could join us. And we're going to be talking about all the good work that you're doing at Big Brothers Big Sisters. Cedric Ikpo, do I have that I didn't ask you if I had that pronunciation right. I want to get it right.
That's perfect. I appreciate that.
Okay. Cedric's been with the NBA for quite some time. I think he may be in his 11th or 12th season with the NBA. Cedric currently serves as the program manager of social responsibility, where he oversees the NBA's social responsibility initiatives, including program management, event execution, and team collaboration across the NBA, the WNA, the G League, and the 2K League. One of Cedric's primary focuses is the NBA's social justice program to create stronger, safer communities by addressing societal issues and promoting inclusion. Cedric also directs several special projects, both domestic and international, including NBA Finals legacy projects, All-Star, Global Games, and Basketball Without Borders, featuring NBA players, senior executives, and former players. So as you can see or hear, Cedric is the perfect person to join this panel. I have to highlight, though, that the significant part of his career, since we're here in San Antonio, from 2010 to 2016, Cedric spent 6 seasons with Spurs Sports and Entertainment, community responsibility team, where he led all CSR initiatives across the organization's conglomerate of franchises, including programming, donations to community partners, marketing, and public relations. And I'm going to mention this as well. Following his stint with the Spurs, he's spent time as a math interventionist for the IDEA Public Schools of San Antonio. IDEA Public Schools is something that we're very proud of in San Antonio. They do a lot of great work in educating our young ones. And so I applaud your involvement there. As important as everything else that you've done. Cedric, thank you for joining us, and look forward to chatting with you in just another minute. We have one. I saved the elder statesman for last, and this is really a pleasure of mine to introduce Dale Hawkins Long. He's a resident of Garland, so he's a fellow Texan. He's the former community outreach coordinator and public information officer for the City of Dallas Public Works Department, where he retired in not so long ago, in April 2018. He is a member of the Garland branch of the NAACP, the Leadership Dallas Alumni Association. He's a fraternity brother at Kappa
Alpha Phi Alpha.
Okay, gotcha. Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity, a life member of the Texas Southern University National Alumni Association, Dallas chapter. And he's received, over his long and storied career, he's been the recipient of numerous awards for volunteer service spanning over 4 decades, where he's, and this is a common theme here, he has been a mentor with big brothers and big sisters. This is important. I think it's important to know that while he lives in Texas, Dale was born in Tuskegee, Alabama, and was reared in Birmingham. And this is the one thing that I think everybody, I certainly took note. Back in 1963, Dale survived the September 1963 burning of the 16th Street Baptist Church. 4 of his friends were tragically killed in that incident. 27 others were injured. He and his late brother Kenneth escaped, thank goodness, escaped unscathed. I highlight that because, and I'll give you a tee up here, Dale, in this first question I'm going to ask our panelists. I kind of would appreciate a retrospective comparing today with yesteryear, back in 1963. It's hard to believe it's been, 57 years since that event. I remember as a small child, showing my age a little bit, about that. And I was just amazed that could even happen. But we can get more into that. So again, welcome panelists. This is something I've been looking forward to, and I know our audience will be glad to hear from you. So we'll probably talk for about 40 minutes about 40 minutes. Armin will come back and interrupt, and he may have some questions from the audience that come in. I have some prepared questions here, but we can flex as we feel like it. It's up to us as the panelists to take the conversation where it needs to go. So with that, let me pose the first question. You heard me teeing up the conversation. Please share your observation and thoughts on recent and ongoing events that I just described. And please feel free to bring any historical perspective. Gail, Armin mentioned, the things that you've been involved in, but I'd like to get your thoughts and perspectives on what you're saying and make it personal. So with that, I'll rotate the order, but Cedric, I'm gonna start with you since you're at the top of my screen, and give us your thoughts.
Well, thanks for having me. First off, it's a pleasure being here with Dale and Gail. I think we are in a unique time, and these things have been happening for a long time, which Dale has experienced firsthand, and I think we've all experienced. I'm sure Gail has as well, and to different extents. And so I think our country is at an inflection point, but also being forced to reckon with the realities that have existed for generations, since the 1600s. And so I think we're in a very unique situation. I'm living in New York right now. We're still very much quarantined. I know it's opening up in Texas a little bit. And so there's, normalcy is coming back. But I think for the most part, the country still is somewhat subdued and forced to see and experience and reckon with what's been happening for a long time. And it's not easy. Change is not easy. I think especially because you can't legislate morality, right? But you can try and educate folks, engage in conversations, and try to shift culture, which doesn't happen overnight. And I think after the tragic murder of George Floyd, everyone was trying to find some solutions, like immediate solutions. And I think frustration started to set in, and maybe I'm speaking for myself, but I think I realized, like, all right, this is not going to change tomorrow as much as I would love it to. And so, especially given the fact of how long this has happened, how deeply seated, racism is into the fabric of our society, of our country, it might even be part of the fabric itself. And so having to undo that is no easy task, but it definitely takes intentionality and action to see some change happen. And, it takes unity and allies and, a multi-pronged approach to finding solutions to this. And so me being, one of the youngest one on this panel, I'm still very much a student of history. And while I may not have experienced, extremely overt racism, particularly that may have threatened my physical well-being, I truly understand levels in which it impacts our society every step of the way, especially given the work that I do in the community that I've done in Texas, and I'm currently doing here in New York as part of the league.
Thank you so much, Cedric. Appreciate your comments. Gail, I'm going to go to you in Florida. Give us your thoughts, perspective. Appreciate it.
Well, first of all, thanks again for having me. It's an honor to be here with Cedric and Dale as well. And as I think about what's taking place right now, unfortunately, this is nothing new. But with everyone having one of these in their hands, and now for America and for children and families of all backgrounds to see in full HD someone being murdered on TV, and for a child to ask someone's mom or a grandma, like, what is that? So I agree with Cedric wholeheartedly that this is not something that'll be fixed by 4 p.m. today. A real and raw discussion is necessary, but we have to understand that Black folks and folks of color have been dealing with this for centuries. And now we are forced to have a conversation, but the harsh reality is we're seeing people for who they are. And we are challenged to, and it's a shame when I see here in Florida and across this country, if someone says Black Lives Matter, then someone else has to counter with, well, Blue Lives Matter as well. Well, what about this? Does it have to be if I promote my Blackness and I celebrate my intelligence and my power and I host and I wrap my arms around allies, that does not mean I'm against someone else. And so the white fragility, let me say it, for someone to think about matter, for someone to say we matter. We're human beings, but woven into our policies and our politics, we were just 3/5 of a person. So how am I feeling right now? There's hope. Certainly I'm not being pessimistic by any means, but we have to be honest with ourselves. And in this conversation, there's an opportunity for humanity to do something about what's historically taken place, what's systemically taken place. But I hope, trust, and pray that we can all be on the right side of history doing something about it.
Yeah, well said. I like that about the conversation, and having those tough conversations, those authentic and hopefully transparent conversations. I think that's absolutely a must. Dale, your thoughts and perspective, and obviously I teed you up to provide maybe a related back to the things you experienced back in the 60s, if you don't mind.
Oh, thank you again for inviting me, Mr. Cruz, and to my colleagues on the panel, Gail and Cedric. It's a pleasure to meet you, Cedric, and good to see you once again, Gail. It's hard to believe that the things that I experienced in Birmingham, growing up in Smithfield community, 16th Street Baptist Church, in just a few days, we will commemorate the 57th anniversary of the church bombing, where 4 precious young lives were taken away. Gail, I tell people as I travel the country and talking about my Big Brothers, Big Sisters activities, I volunteered because Addie, Denise, Cynthia, and Carol didn't get a chance because their lives were lost at 12 years old. I find it very difficult that we're still struggling for simple things like the right to vote. We heard quite a bit about that during the death of John Lewis. The right to vote, our right to vote, to function as a citizen of this country is being threatened 60 years since the passing of the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act and the Federal Housing Act. We're still trying to achieve those type things. By and large, what I found over the years, and again, moving from Birmingham to Houston to go to school and now here in the Dallas area, the critical issue that I see is that people don't know each other. If we endeavor to get to know each other, to spend time with each other, to break bread, you'll find that we like the same things. We have the same values. I want a nice, clean, safe neighborhood, good schools for my kids, a nice restaurant to go to every now and then, and shop for healthy foods, and a doctor to go to if I need to. What's different about that than anybody else? So, one of the unique things that I heard about all of us is that we're involved with kids' activities. And I can appreciate that because, as you know, most of my life has been spent, most of my adult life has been spent working with Big Brothers, Big Sisters. And, I have to have the talk with my 17-year-old little brother right now about how to even conduct himself when he goes to the mall, or if he chooses to go to a social function in the evening. When I was growing up in Birmingham, even, I could go to a party at night and make it home by my dad's 11:30 curfew. But nowadays, kids have to have day parties because of the safety issues. And part of that is being stopped by the police who's supposed to protect and serve us.
Thank you, Dale, so much. Really appreciate that. We have a minute or two. Gail, Cedric, any follow-ups based on what your fellow panelists shared?
I just want to thank Dale for just being a champion, for someone to have, and Cedric touched on it as well, but see, Dale lived through this, in the 60s, and to unfortunately see some of the same things taking place. But Dale has been a champion. I mean, I think at the end of the day, we all can do something. And Dale has been a champion for kids as a big brother. And I serve certainly as a big brother leading this organization as well. I mean, our kids are watching us, and we have an obligation to this next generation. It's encouraging to see so many Black, white, and brown children standing together saying, we don't want to grow up like Dale did in the 60s, not on our watch. And so I know we have a tremendous responsibility to back these kids up and be better as human beings.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we're hearing a lot, enough is enough, right? That phrase, enough is enough, like that has been said for so long, and, we've heard from Black voices for generations. And this is the time where I feel like this is where that inflection point comes in, and that we're hearing enough other voices now in the mix that are standing up and saying, no, like, I agree, enough is enough. And Black people have spoken through literature, through art, through activism, so many different mediums. But Black voices aren't going to cut it in a vacuum. And it's going to take other people to come to unite and support and uplift that message for change to actually happen. And so, it's incumbent upon us as a whole, as a society, to make sure that this cancer of racism is cured once and for all, and that it's fixed at the legislative level, it's fixed in a number of different levels in our society.
What I've heard from all three of you, and it's not surprising because I share the same sentiment, is as bad as things have been, as bad as things are now, there is hope. There is a path forward, a positive path forward, but it's going to take those tough conversations. I would hate to think, and I don't think, that we as a society will squander this opportunity, because where there's difficulty, there is also opportunity. And each of you, gentlemen, have spoken about that hope and that opportunity. Cedric, you're so absolutely right that, it can't be the Black or the brown folk, pushing the rope up the hill, right? We need a society as a whole, these United States and its citizens, no matter the color, no matter the make or model of the individual, helping push or pull that rope. And that's only going to come through good conversation, honest conversation, to get past the differences, because as was highlighted, we have far more in common than we do in differences. And once we recognize that and build on that that foundation, that's a powerful concept. That's a powerful thought. So good. Well, moving on to the next question. This panel is called Globalism and Race. Obviously, because of the power of media and social media in particular, not only are the citizens of the United States seeing things unfold here, but the whole world is seeing what's playing out in this country. And of course, it being election year, with things, people are watching with great interest and curiosity. We don't live in a vacuum. We live in a global society. And that's the whole idea of globalism, is how we connect the geographic differences and the cultural differences and function as a world community. So my next question is, what do you see as the effect or impact of what's happening here in the US on the rest of the world? Cedric, I know NBA has a lot of things going on internationally. Gail and Dale, you guys are men of this world, so I know you have an opinion on that. And I think what I'll do is change the order here, and I'm going to start with you, Gail. Any thoughts on the kind of global impact, and maybe what do you think our international brothers and sisters are thinking about what they're seeing here in this country?
Well, when you say United States of America, inherent in that is, center stage. And inherent in that is, okay, well, how's the U.S. handling this? And so staying outside of politics, but if you look at just the facts as it relates to COVID-19 and racism 2020, how's the United States of America handling the sickness of racism, and how's the United States of America handling COVID-19? Because underlying health disparities, Why are communities of color more impacted? Well, it goes back to what we were talking about. And so whether it's education and kids who are struggling, now we got little brothers and little sisters. We're helping them get computers. We're addressing food insecurity. So what it's done on the world stage, AB, is it's given us an opportunity to shine, but unfortunately we have not. And so, but it still speaks to opportunity. What's taking place in terms of some Americans saying, hey, racism doesn't exist. I've heard people say that publicly. There's no issues. There aren't two justice systems. Well, when I was 18 years old, I grew up in inner city Toledo, Ohio. And to make this a little personal and concise as well, and I went out to meet my daddy in Oakland, California. And I had a gun in my head by a police officer. I pulled into his apartment complex in the suburbs. But now what's some of the messaging? Well, Black folks coming in the suburbs. I went to his suburban apartment complex, pulled in with my rental car, 18 years old in my rental car. And I was cut off by two sports cars. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe somebody wants his parking spot. You can have it. But then I saw the badges. And then I saw the guns. And then I became afraid. And gentlemen, to tell you that I could have been George Floyd. I could have been dead that night in a parking lot with my Ohio driver's license. What was said to me that night, I'll never forget. And this is where the world is watching. At least you were safe tonight. I said, what are you doing? I'm here to meet my dad. He lives in that apartment right there. We were looking for someone that looked like you. And until the world comes to grips with the fact that I want the world to see me as a Black man. And I've heard people say, I don't see color. No, I want you to see me as an intelligent Black man, married to my beautiful Black wife and my beautiful children. See people for who they are and embrace that humanity. And I thank all of our allies, our non-Black allies. Cedric mentioned it, and I echo his sentiments. But the world is watching, and let's just say, I don't think we're getting a passing grade right now. I say that as a Black man. I say that as a professional. I say that as a CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters of Miami. But I still have hope. We still have opportunity. Class is still in session.
Gail, thanks for that, especially sharing that personal story. It's that fact is we hear stories like that all the time because they do in fact happen, whether it's back when you were 18 or yesterday, somewhere here in the United States. So thanks for sharing that. Dale, your thoughts?
Well, America is known as a superpower, along with China and Russia, and the entire world looks upon us for advice, for leadership, as has been in previous years. I agree with Gail that we might be losing that position right now as it stands. But he's already alluded to, because all of us have these devices, it makes all of us television producers. And in a matter of seconds, we can produce our own shows right in our hand and tell the world and show the world what's going on in our lives here in these United States. If you go back and look at the history of the civil rights movement in Birmingham, Dr. King had a lot of vision in the way he conducted his demonstrations and the children's movement in Birmingham. Go back and read the history, and it explains that Dr. King strategically did his demonstrations with enough time for footage of what was going on in Birmingham to be placed on a plane, sent to New York, and make the 5 o'clock news. Because the essence of what he was trying to demonstrate in Birmingham was to show the world, the entire world, what was going on. Otherwise, they would have no idea that people would be so cruel to sick police dogs and fire hoses and billy clubs on kids, and then lock them up in droves in jail. The media played a significant part, and it has been expanded by, again, making sure that all of us have the capability of doing just that. So America has a long way to go when it comes to regaining our position of leadership, because the whole world is watching us. And I look forward to some changes. Sometimes I look at that pandemic as a wake-up call for this country. Nothing's going to change unless it's a global effort. By us leaving the World Health Organization, big mistake. It has to be a global effort because the entire world is suffering with this disease. And unless we're talking to each other, and in many cases taking the leadership, this is going to last a lot longer than it should.
Thank you, Dale. Cedric, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's tough because I think, to Dale and Gail's points, we, as a U.S., we claim, to be the world's superpower, and we have this America exceptionalism, right? It's a regular thing. And I feel like we confuse patriotism with not being able to be critical of who we are as a nation. And that, I feel like, to me, the most patriotic thing you can do is look to clean up your own house so that you're actually living up to the ideals that you claim to have on paper. And we have some wonderfully written documents that our founding fathers wrote, which, our founding fathers weren't by any means perfect in what they wrote, but the documents that they wrote lay the groundwork for something to live up to, and we have fallen short. We are not the moral authority because we haven't lived up to those ideals. We haven't had proven to have the ability or desire to see this through all the way. But that said, this isn't an American. This problem isn't exclusive to the U.S. Like you mentioned, this is something that is being that other countries are being impacted by as well. We're seeing the effects of colonialism, the residual effects of colonialism in different countries. Because of social media, we've seen protests and demonstrations that have spewed from different countries in response to what is happening in the U.S. and other way, and vice versa as well. And so I think we realize, again, to your point, AB, that we have a lot more in common, regardless of our man-made boundaries, regardless of the flag that we stand by. We realize that this is a human issue. This is humanity at its core. It's the fundamental nature of what it means to be human, and demonstrate and exercise those fundamental principles of freedom and being able to do what you want to do within the law, and be able to do it without looking over your shoulder, or without being crushed by the weight of some things that are imposed upon you by the governments, for example. And I think that as Americans, as global citizens, when an injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere, because once, and that's not my quote, that's MLK, but once you turn the blind eye to one injustice, you might be next, and or it might spill over into another segment of our society, of our population. And so as global citizens, we need to be vocal and not rest until full equality is realized for everybody. And I think, again, that's where allyship comes in, because no one can do this. No one person can do this alone. No one group can do this alone. We've seen plenty of activists that have sprung up around the world, past and present. We've seen plenty of opposition, at the government level, and at the hands of vigilantes. And we really need to be intentional and unify and unite and fight this thing head on, because if we're stagnant, change won't happen. And we have some things coming up in November and other ways to voice our opinions. And I think that it takes action. You can't be passive and apathetic and expect change. And it takes uncomfortable, level of discomfort and vulnerability to see these things through. But
Thanks, Cedric. Really well said. So there are a lot of individuals, groups, organizations kind of, experiencing things that we've seen and are experiencing, and they're looking for answers. They're looking at ways. And so I thought we'd tap into the kind of the hope and opportunities. Certainly the people that have tuned in to watch you guys and listen to what you have to say. I'd like to leave them, or certainly with some thoughts and ideas. And this is where you can incorporate maybe what your organization is doing. But what I want to get at is, what are you and or your organization doing to address racial injustice? And maybe there'll be some tidbits, some gems in there that people can, or best practices maybe, lessons learned that people can take back to their organizations and say, okay, maybe we need to add this to our list of things that we need to explore. So with that, if you don't mind commenting, I'm going to turn to Dale this time. And what thoughts and ideas do you have, Dale, for us on, to again, tap into that hope and opportunity and what we should do going forward?
Well, thank you. In today's Dallas Morning News, there was an article about the Divine Nine. That is the group of conglomerate of traditionally Black sororities and fraternities. And the article talks about early on in the civil rights movement, even before that, the leadership of Black people in this country took place within the fraternity organizations and the Black church. So it's significant that we keep that in mind, because for over 100 years, all of us as fraternity and Black sororities and fraternities have engaged in social justice. My group, I'm in Alpha, and we conduct COVID-19 testing all over the country. We partner with churches and with municipal groups to make sure that those things happen. We get the word out. We use social media to make sure that the people that we serve, the communities we serve, and especially the underserved, are aware of the opportunities there available to them. Right now, we're looking at voter registration, voter education, the 2020 census that sometimes we forget, and it's been kind of hidden behind all of the things that have been happening to us recently. But the census is so important because the federal government looks at those numbers in order to disperse resources in terms of schools and infrastructure and the things that affect our neighborhood. They have to know who lives where and how many people. So if you're watching this, if you haven't done it, I urge you to complete that form. But Alpha men and Omegas and Kappas and the AKs and the Deltas, all of us have been involved with social justice issues and making sure that our communities are informed and educated. If you go to my Facebook page, I always talk about a little new group called Kids in Birmingham, 1963.org. Watch this. All of us, and it's about 80 of us, grew up in Birmingham in the 60s. We couldn't have possibly known each other because we're Black and white. And because of segregation, there was no opportunity for us to get to know each other. But we found each other in the last 5 years. And we're all over the country. And we formed this group. And we're still trying really to define ourselves. But what we just launched was a voter checkoff list to make sure that people have the knowledge that they need in order to successfully exercise their right to vote. So get involved, be a part of your communities. When your council person calls you and asks you to serve on the board, check it out, because we need to be a part of making decisions that affect our communities. And guess what? If we don't do it, then other people will.
Yeah, thanks. And I appreciate you mentioning voter registration. Certainly, those are things that are really should be high on the list. I appreciate that. Gail, your thoughts, suggestions, your recommendations. You've done it at Big Brothers Big Sisters Miami, right? Kind of lessons learned. Share the wealth.
Well, I think first and foremost, at the core of what Big Brothers Big Sisters does, not only just here in Miami, but across this country and even internationally. 237 affiliates nationwide here in the United States of America. And we bring people together from various backgrounds into what we call a match, building mutual trust and respect. And I've seen there's countless stories of a Hispanic big brother or big sister with maybe a black little brother, and then also white non-black bigs saying this little brother is like family. We need more men of color to become bigs. Let me say that out loud. It's not too heavy. The majority of the kids we serve look just like Gail, and Cedric. And they need to see someone who can, through lived experience. I am not in any way minimizing the incredible matches we have, but there is a need. And so that call to action in terms of not only best practices, but also the opportunity that we have is to get more folks involved in the mentoring space. The cost of doing nothing is far too high. I would encourage everyone to use their platforms. Even at home, if you're around the table, whatever you celebrate, if it's Thanksgiving and you're having a family meal and someone makes an off-color comment, confront it. Use your platform at home, domestically. Use your platform occupationally. The boardrooms need to be reflective of the children and the communities you serve. A lot of companies are now putting dollars, but don't just it's easy to write a check and put a statement on social media. I challenge all corporate entities to make sure your boardroom looks like this panel today, because if you want to impact communities of color, make sure you have some folks that can relate to those communities at the table making decisions. Still write the check, but also make sure you invest in people as well. And then I would say, just lastly, in terms of from the Big Brothers Big Sisters lens, from any community-based organization, people need to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Cedric said it very eloquently. Be intentional, be deliberate, because if we do nothing, and Dale alluded to this as well, someone else is going to do something and you may not like it. And so what we're doing on September 22nd here, Big Brothers Big Sisters of Miami, partnering with the local NFL team, the Miami Dolphins, we're doing not only a voter registration partnership with NAACP, voter registration, the Census Bureau will be here, making sure folks are counted, and we're also giving away food to 1,000 folks in our community. So as we address the keeping kids connected through making matches, addressing food insecurity, but also making sure folks are civically engaged, because you have to qualify to complain. If you don't vote, if you're not counted in the census, then I'm sorry, folks, and you got to qualify to complain. So let's stay solution focused and make sure we can work together for the cause of humanity to get through this.
That's great, Gail. I think in the mix there, I think I heard about 6 call to actions in there. So, and they're all good. Dale had mentioned the census as well. Very important. That's right. You got to be on the radar to be heard, and you get on the radar by making sure that you're counted and make sure you're registered and you exercise that your right to vote. I do like the call out there. You have said there are voids in terms of mentors, and men and women need to step up and fill those voids because it is so important for our youth to be able to see what dreams are really possible, and they'll see that through their mentors. So I appreciate those comments. Cedric, why don't you round it out, this discussion on, and maybe you can talk about the NBA or your choice.
Sure. First, I was a proud big brother when I was in San Antonio, so I just want to flag that. And I will say at the league office, I'm proud to represent the NBA. I'm my voice, right? I'm just my voice, but I'm a part of a very large network of folks that are very much committed to this cause as well. And we first acknowledge that we don't have all the answers, and that we aren't holier than thou. But we are focusing on a few things, one of which is, to Dale's point, increasing the representation of Black employees across all levels, but particularly at the leadership level. I think that's critical in making sure that not only are simple mistakes avoided, that we've seen some companies, slip up and do some things, put some things out that had they had diversity at the decision-making level, there's no way those things would have gone through. And so I think it's not just covering yourself and covering your bases, but it's just it's the right thing to do. It makes sense. You need to be representative of how our country is, particularly us as a league that's 75% plus of black players at WNBA and NBA levels. We need to be closely aligned and reflective of that number. Economic inclusion and making sure that Dale's point and Gail's point, checks are important. Funding is necessary. We live in a capitalistic society, and money is very essential at making sure that programming is able to get off without a hitch. However, that's not all that it is. But that said, economic inclusion is very important. From the dollars that you spend, making sure that you are patronizing Black businesses. And I've seen a lot of this where people are like, we need to support Black businesses. And so I think most times we look at, all right, well, I'll eat at a Black restaurant now. But it's a lot lot deeper than that. And I think that, making sure that, there's alignment in values as well with the partners, the corporate partners that you work with, that organizations are working alongside, and it's almost like establishing what your values are as an organization and making sure that whatever money that's being spent with a marketing partner or any other sort of partner, that there's alignment there, because we have a unique platform, and that our platform spans and spreads far and wide. And so I think that we can use and leverage that weight of that voice to create some change from an economic perspective. And then programming wise, that's kind of, in addition to just raising awareness and using our reach, we are also very committed programmatically. And so I work at the league office, but as Armin mentioned earlier, I was at the team level. And so we have a very unique relationship with teams. Teams are very much part of the NBA family. We couldn't do it without the teams. And with all 30 teams on the NBA side, 12 on the WNBA side, we have Gatorade G League teams. We have 2K League teams. Our tentacles spread far and wide. And then, of course, we have international reach as well. And so, from a programmatic perspective, we have an NBA Voices program that focuses on social justice, inclusion, and equality, create a safer, more inclusive culture and environment for everybody. We just recently launched an NBA Foundation, which is focused on economic advancement and empowerment for young Black people, particularly around the 14 to 24-year-old age range, as they get ready for that first career touch point, and then kind of that first step once they get the career, and then afterwards. And so we see that that's a major focus as well. And then look, civic engagement is the lowest hanging fruit. It's very top of mind for everybody, and we're using our platform to make sure that we're pushing that out. Proud to announce we have 20 NBA teams who are using their arenas or facilities as polling sites or being used for different voting activities. And so I think teams are and the NBA family is trying to be creative as far as what assets and resources we have to kind of further this mission. And it's not just focusing on the national election, but we realize, all right, national election is one thing, but local elections, and we're hearing this a lot. And I think people are starting to finally get this more widespread. And local elections are just as important. And so when we talk about civic engagement, this is a sustained thing. It isn't a once every 4-year activity. It's something that we need to be aware of, up to speed with. It's supposed to be right for everybody. We're still fighting 60 years after the signing of the Voting Rights Act, but that's a very important piece. And then, of course, the census, to your point. So lots of different ways that we can get involved. We have to be active. You have to be intentional. And honestly, we can't be lazy about it. We have to. It needs to be a priority, and we're seeing, fortunately, several organizations that are making it a priority as well by providing, paid time off on election days to allow their staff to go out and vote, but also volunteer as poll workers. We're seeing with COVID, particularly with some of our older population that typically votes, they're more at risk these days. And so there's a call to action for younger poll workers to go out and volunteer to work the polls as well, so that, because if there's a shortage of poll workers, sometimes those polling places are closed, furthering the voter suppression. And so I'm personally volunteering to work the polls, and I'm excited about that. This will be my first time, but there's so many things we can do, and I hope that folks watching aren't relying solely on us us four to figure that out. Google is an amazing thing, and it just takes intentionality to figure out some solutions as well.
Wonderful. Thank you to all of you for great suggestions. I hope the audience jotted down some of those great recommendations. Armin's about ready to give us the hook. I wanted to give each one like about maybe 10, 15 seconds each to do a final lightning round, if you will. Dale, any final comments before Armin steps in here?
Well, thank you. Cedric, let me tell you how grateful I am to see the NBA and the NFL and the other professional leagues get involved with social issues around this country. When they first got involved, there was an effort to stifle them. You know what I'm talking about. But with the intellectual energy that I've observed over the last several months, with all that's been going on in this country, I was indeed excited and about the power that I've seen. And again, pass this on from me, taken from a 68-year-old man. I certainly appreciate that. And I just wanted to say that. Finally, I'll say, in order to be men and women, our kids have to see men and women, Gail. And you've heard me say that all over the country. In order to be a man, they got to see a man. And so I would echo your sentiment in getting people involved in Big Brothers, Big Sisters, in some form of mentoring. And then finally, my fraternity has a slogan that says, a voteless people is a hopeless people. We don't get out and do it, November 3rd, other people will be making decisions for us. And then after the decisions are made, write your Congress people, hold them accountable. I stopped mine in the airport in DC a couple of months ago, blew him away. But we sat there and I told him what was on my mind. I kept my distance though. Anyway, thank you again for inviting me. This has been great. And it's forums like this that will enable the world to understand what's going on and to empower us with knowledge that's going to move this country forward.
Okay, Gail. Dale took about all of your time, but I want to give you 5 seconds or whatever.
I got it from Cedric.
5 seconds. I'll follow Dale any day of the week. The cost of doing nothing is far too high. Thank you to Armin. Thank you, AB. It's just been a pleasure being on this panel. We can all do something.
Thank you. Cedric, final words, sir.
No one's perfect. I think we realize that we're on this panel, but it doesn't mean that we have everything figured out. It takes intentionality. You have to do a listening and learning tour, figure out where your shortcomings are, and just do something. Read a book, learn something about someone else, have a conversation, but we have to be active contributors to this issue and finding a solution. So I'm just glad to be working alongside you wonderful people, and the fight goes on.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you. I look forward to being able to shake your hand in person sometime soon. Count on me, call on me. This has been a wonderful conversation. I appreciate the honesty and frankness. I know we could talk much longer, but Armin's got that look in his face, and I know what that means. Armin, back to you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, AB. Thank you all. Really appreciate you all for taking time. I was at a listening in yesterday at a call, and one of the women who works for the YMCA, she said, "To be continued" is one of my favorite words. And that's where I see this. The World Affairs Council, we talk about things that are internationally focused, and not doing this would be a disservice to the people who support us. And so, there are a lot of people who came out issuing statements and doing this or doing that. We wanted to do something mindful. This is our first in many series of discussions that we want to have. And one thing I think Gail mentioned it earlier, was the fact of doing nothing, of having your voice, using your platform, whatever that is. I think you said that, if I'm not mistaken, during your presentation a few months ago. And that was, again, I don't want it to keep bragging on you, but but it's well worth it, because I think that's what ignited me to put all this together, including one on race and how it's looked at internationally, and the fact of being uncomfortable. I think that's something that people are afraid to do, particularly when it comes to race. There's so many other issues that in our lives that we feel uncomfortable with, but to get out of the comfort zone to talk about these issues. So you all are my mentors in a way, and I appreciate you for coming on, and not to take light away from Big Brothers Big Sisters. Please support them as well today. It's the Big Give Day today in San Antonio, so be sure to check them out as well. Cedric, thank you, my friend. Cedric is very humble, as you all are. He was instrumental in making sure we had, when we were at Big Brothers Big Sisters, to have a program, a mentoring program with the Spurs, and with their executive team and some of their other support staff. So in addition to him being a big, and now he's gone on to bigger things in New York. So thank you, Cedric. Gail, keep up the amazing work in Miami. Your leadership is it's not limited to Miami. It permeates throughout the country. So thank you for that. Dale, my friend, I don't think I've met anyone who's had more littles than you. And they range from what, 12 years old to like 30, right?
Yeah, I've had 7. This is my 7th one.
And I'll never forget. I think Dale, if I'm not mistaken, you were on a billboard in the Dallas area for some time, right, representing the organization. So anyway, thank you all again for such a wonderful discussion, and AB Cruz for moderating this panel, and to be continued.
Thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Have a great week.
Thank you too. Take care of yourselves.
Thank you.